This is Inside Mside, your favorite podcast for all things Morningside. Here's stories from students, alumni, faculty, and more about what makes the Morningside experience so special. All right, well, welcome back for another edition. This is a special edition of the pod. We are actually having a collaboration of Down the Mside line and Inside Mside. We're excited to be collaborating. I'm Alex Watters, your host of Inside Mside.
Mark Adkins, the host of Down the Mside line, and it's really great to be working with Alex and have his energy for today because we have a very special guest, Sharon Ocker, a former professor at Morningside, and I always call him the resident sports historian because he's got more knowledge in that head and in those books he carries around than anybody I know. So,
it is. I tell you what, it's an absolute honor to be here to learn a little bit about Sharon, about your experience and time here at Morningside, and as Mark said, being the resident sport historian. I mean, you are a staple at basketball games, sporting events. I love catching up with you at all that. Sharon, welcome to the pod.
Good to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you, especially for this collaboration. It's something Mark and I are looking forward to having more episodes. Just people that really have had an impact on this campus, both in the athletic world, but also just on the fabric of what it means to be a Morningsider. And so, Sharon, I want to kick off the pod with a question that I usually ask everyone that I have on, and that's, just talk to me a little bit about what brought you to Morningside initially. You had a long career here, but what brought you here way in the beginning?
Well, I was a high school superintendent and I coached 4 years. And along the way, I had a lot of student teachers a lot of teachers that came to Diller when I was superintendent. And I enjoyed working with those new people. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to go to college and work with student teachers who are going to become teachers.
Yeah.
And Russell Eismo was department chair in education. He came to Lincoln when I was finishing up my doctor's degree. And it just happened that he saw he was interviewing people for a job at Morningside. And I didn't know about that. I looked up on a list of possible jobs, and I saw Morningside's going to be there that afternoon, so I wasn't dressed properly. I went home, put my suit on, went to interview Dr. Eismo. Well, he liked me, and he brought me to Morningside, and I taught there 29 years in the education department. That's how I came.
Wow. Now, I mean, we glazed over some stuff. Gosh, you went to school, were a teacher and everything, all the way up to administrator, and then thought you wanted to get into really teaching at the collegiate level. That's so awesome. Yeah. Where were you at in this time? Where were you teaching initially?
Well, I taught and coached at Table Rock, Nebraska, southeast Nebraska, for 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Football, basketball, and track.
Yeah.
And then I became a superintendent at Diller, Nebraska, which is about 60 miles south of Lincoln. And I did a little bit of coaching there too. 1 year I coached. 2 years I coached volleyball because nobody else would do it. And I learned something about coaching women. When we won, they cried. And when we lost, we cried. Either way, they cried.
There you go. You just had to be used to it, right? Exactly. Willing to coach just about any sport, it seems.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, Sharon. That's great. And so then were we one of your first interviews then? When you started thinking about college, it sounds like it just happened.
Yeah.
The stars aligned and you came here. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's what happened.
Wow. And then you started your career and we held on tight.
That's right.
Right?
So did I hear you say you had a connection here?
No.
Previously, no?
No connections.
Okay.
When I came, being with the sports background, I thought it'd be kind of fun to be involved somehow with sports here. And it just happened that the basketball scorekeeper for men had just retired from that. And it was an opening. So I got to be the scorekeeper for all 29 years.
Really?
At men's basketball. And that was really delightful. A lot of fun.
Well, and talked a little bit about the impact that had on your life. I mean, gosh, I was a first-year advisor for quite some time, and so I got to work with these students and see them and hear about them in the classroom and how they were doing, and then get to see them perform, I mean, and play their craft, their sport. That had to be special for you.
It really was. Yeah. I got to know those guys real well, and a lot of great people played basketball. Then along the way, I thought, it'd be kind of fun to have a history of basketball. Chuck Obie had written a kind of a brief one, but I thought, well, I'd like to go through it's 100 years of basketball, century of hoops.
Wow.
So I interviewed 45 people, got all kinds of stories, and so that's what the meat of what this book was all about, was having the stories that people told me. Like Al Buckingham, my goodness, what a guy. Interviewed him 5 or 6 times, and he had a million stories to tell about Morningside.
Yeah.
And just on and on and on. And that's what became the guts of this book. And that was so much fun to do. Oh my gosh, that was a great experience.
How long ago did you put that together, Sharon?
Oh, in 2000, I guess, 1999.
1999.
Yeah.
When you think back at the people you get to talk to, I mean, Al Buckingham, he's like the cornerstone of the M Club room.
Oh, yeah.
And it just makes me shake my head that you actually had the chance to interact with that man, because I would love to have been able to do something like that, but you actually got to. What did that mean? I'm sure you didn't know it at the time, but when you look back at the book you created, what does that mean to you and everything you did during your career here?
Well, Buck was such a great guy and had such an influence. He was athletic director for years. He was basketball coach, the whole business, and that was really special. By the way, Buck was involved in the Olympics, which is going on now, and he was in charge of housing and food for several Olympics.
Really?
Including Munich, where they had the terrorist attack, and so forth.
Yeah.
And I wondered what it would be like today for him to be director of, the food is different for all these different countries.
Yeah.
And you arrange that kind of thing, It's just amazing.
And how something's able to translate from a passion for athletics, into being able to host something like that and manage the food and beverage for an Olympics.
Yeah.
From Morningside to the Olympics,
Yeah.
right? There you go. That's the title of the next book.
When you look back at those 29 years of doing men's basketball scorekeeping, and I know this is very broad, but are there any memories you'd just like to talk about? Just kind of talk about things you think of.
Oh, my. Well, there's so many of them. Remember Dave Slesher, who was almost 7 foot tall?
Really?
Was a great player. He was the only person who ever was the most valuable player in the North Central Conference for 2 years. He was only here 2 years. He went to Northwestern, which is a junior college at the time, and he came here and became a star. And I'd look at my scorebook, I'd think, gosh, Slush is not having a very good night. I'd look down the scorebook, well, he got 20 points. I don't know how many rebounds he had. Fantastic player. And then, of course, Dan Callahan.
Yeah.
Such a colorful coach. You could write books about the things he did. Just fantastic.
And to just have honored him, recently too.
Really,
welcoming him back to campus as often as we can, that's for sure.
You could tell stories forever about Callahan. Remember one especially, one night this young student came across the gym floor with a white cane. He was partially blind. Came over there and sat next to the bench. And the ref came over and said, "Callahan, you trying to make a statement here?" He said, "No, he's singing the national anthem."
Oh.
He thought Callahan was picking on them
because
they were blind.
Yeah, I've heard he's a Great man for sure.
He was.
Yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of people that stood out to you over the years.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the classroom, your time in the classroom. I mean, it's obvious your interest and just your passion for Morningside athletics. Talk to me about what it meant. Talk to me about the transition, because you were used to teaching and in more of the lower levels and then the administration side of it. But then you're coming to Morningside and teaching college students. I mean, preparing educators to go into their future career.
That was a tough change, because I had no idea what I was going to do with the classroom.
Yeah.
First time teaching college classes, what would the kids be like, how would they respond? And how would I get the material to teach with, the books and so forth? I was really kind of scared to death. But it kind of happened, and I got used to it, and it was wonderful. I counted up I had a little card called a Who's It card, Who Is It?
Okay.
Every student I had in class filled out one of those for class. It talked about their name and background and so forth. And I kept those, and I counted them up, had 5,000 students in those 29 years.
No
Had 500 student teachers over the years. And those are all great memories. And I love teaching, always loved teaching. That was a special thing for me. And trying to prepare, my specialty was secondary methods for working with junior high and high school teachers coming up. And that's where I did my student teaching supervision. And a lot of those people went on to teach, and became successful. And that's been a great thing to look back on.
Wow.
Looking back at almost 3 decades of teaching, my dad was a teacher, and I remember him saying that things changed a lot from year to year, but you were talking almost 3 decades. How were you able to continue to keep a manner of excellence like you had in the classroom while having to change with things like technology and so forth?
Yeah, that was a big change. I taught a course called Audiovisual Methods, and all the equipment that I taught about is passé now. It's all gone. Pretty much overhead projector, a little bit, some of that. Slide projector, they're gone.
Yeah.
Opaque projector, they're gone. 16 millimeter movie projector, it's gone. All that stuff changed. I don't know what I'd do today. What would I teach about today about the methods, audiovisual methods?
How were you able to change your teaching techniques to fit the time, like in 67, and then that probably wouldn't work in the 70s, and that might not work in the 80s. How were you able to continue to keep with the times on your teaching technique?
You just kind of went along with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever was there, you did,
You learn as you go, huh?
You learn as you go.
Yeah. Well, and kind of what you were saying about when you first started teaching, like you can go into it and be afraid and a little apprehensive and unsure about yourself, and then you find your footing and you take off.
One of my favorite classes was a graduate class called Philosophy of Education.
Okay.
And when I had philosophy of education in my master's and doctor's work, it was all lecture. Well, I thought I cannot lecture about that. I don't like to lecture anyway. I like to have discussion. But I found some good books, and we'd read about 40 pages a day in that graduate class, and then we'd form groups, had groups of 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And they had questions for them to discuss about that reading. And then they would discuss in the groups for a while. Then we brought it all back together. It got to be a favorite thing of mine because the discussion with teachers who were out there in the field getting their masters, they had really great stories to tell, and they had opinions about everything. At the undergraduate level, kids didn't speak up very much.
Really?
But the graduate students, those teachers, They were wonderful. And that got to be a favorite class of mine. Really was.
Well, just the ideas and the discussion that I'm sure spawned from that. You know, that was something that was really special to me at Morningside, having some of those discussion-based classes and being able to go through some of that. Were any stories or anything jump to mind, Sharon, especially those early days? I mean, as you were making your way through and then collecting those Who's It cards and all of that stuff. Any stories or anything from the classroom?
The one thing I remember most of all is the bad student teachers. There weren't that many,
Okay.
8 or 10 maybe.
Yeah.
But that's the thing you remember. It's how bad they were. We had a teacher one time at North Middle, North Junior at that time, and I wasn't supervising that young man, but Edna Rogers, one of our teachers, was doing that. And she came to me one day and she said, Dr. Ocker, I've got a strange situation with this student teacher. Would you please come out and observe and see what you think? So I went out there that day, and this man taught to one row. He ignored the rest of the classroom. He just taught, asked questions, and worked with just that one row of kids. That was so strange. He didn't make it.
Yeah.
He didn't make it. He didn't become a teacher.
Yeah. It is interesting, isn't it? How sometimes over the course of your entire career, sometimes you focus on the problematic ones or the ones that just didn't make it up there, right?
Yeah.
Gosh, but there had to be so many memories of ones that did. and
Remember
ones
the
that went
really
on
good
to
ones too.
succeed.
The really
Yeah.
good ones.
Yeah. Well, and I think, Mark, you would say too, I mean, that's on the basketball court as well, right?
Yeah,
the ones
yeah,
that
definitely.
were a challenge to bring up or, or the stars that were shining bright.
I was just thinking back to my brief teaching career as an adjunct at Manchester University. I don't know if I would want to have Sharon as my teaching advisor. You probably would have said, no, we got to stop the class, Mr. Adkins.
Yeah.
I was the guy who used to walk down the middle to kind of keep everybody engaged. So, because we had tables that were stacked back. So, hopefully that would have met with your approval. I'm not sure if it would.
Right.
So, yeah, but Sharon, think back to '67, and I know it's a long time ago, but day one on campus, what do you remember about it?
Oh boy. Well, it wasn't as pretty as it is now.
Yeah.
It was nice, but I was teaching in Lewis Hall, and the second floor all those years. It was impressive. When I saw the library the first time, I thought it said the House of Culture. And that wasn't really what it was. So I was mistaken on that, But the campus has developed in such a beautiful place. I've been on a lot of campuses in my life, and none of them are as pretty as this one is. All the flowers and the buildings well kept and the whole business. It's very good.
Yeah, it's been pretty phenomenal. I mean, just in my lifetime to see the transformation of this campus. We talk about the impact that at least even the Reinders legacy, with President Reinders and the transformation that he has been under his watch of this campus. I mean, his affinity for fountains, now we got a couple fountains here on campus that students and I think alumni alike really enjoy. But gosh, I can't imagine even before his time, there had to be a lot of changes and you had to see a progression of this campus. Yeah. Some favorite changes or things that you've noticed over the years?
Well, the big thing, of course, is getting that football stadium.
Yeah.
That was Roberts Stadium, belonged to public schools. It was in need of great repair, and the schools still felt like they could not have the money to get that done. And so the superintendent at that time was a friend of John Reinders. Anyway, they were buddies. They played cards together. And one night the superintendent said, well, how would you like to buy the stadium? $1. We'll sell it to you for $1. And he thought, man, that's a great opportunity. So they bought the stadium, and Elwood Olson had a lot of money built up, and the college had some money too, and they renovated it big time, made a beautiful place out of it, and that's been a wonderful thing. The public school people were kind of shook up about that. They thought, what's it going to mean to our games?
Yeah, their athletics.
But Morningside promised, we'll make it available for you. We'll run over backwards to do that. And so that became a great thing.
Yeah.
That was the biggest change of all, I think, was getting that stadium.
Yeah. Well, and just even seeing the other changes that have impacted athletics around campus. I mean, I know that's Mark's wheelhouse, is going around to all these different stadiums and stuff. But I even think about the tennis complex. I mean, you talked about Mace, Larry Mason, the coach, longtime Morningsider, alumni, fraternity brother, all of those things, and seeing that tennis complex. Or even, Sharon, I get a bump into you at basketball games quite often. I think even the paint, the changes of that basketball at the gymnasium, don't you think that's just been great?
Oh, yeah. It's great. It's great.
Something that we can be proud of.
It is.
Something that we can be proud of, indeed.
Speaking of transitions, since Alex led us into this, to go from a scorekeeper, a teacher, to a fan, where did cowbell come from? I sit in front of you at all the games, and I always miss it. If you're not there, there's no cowbell. So where did cowbell
That's
come
right,
from?
because at games he's shaking that cowbell,
That's right.
isn't he?
I want to know where the cowbell came from.
Well, that's a simple answer. I'm quite a fan, and I yell too much at the officials and whatever. And I thought, if I yell that much, I'm going to get in trouble. But if I had something to make noise with, besides yelling, maybe that would get me off the hook. So that's my answer to not yelling too much.
There you go. You
Just
had
to ring the
to
bell.
find a different way to make a little noise. That's great. That's great.
I remember one time I went to Northern Colorado game, flew out there and went to the game. And there were several Morningsiders there, about 4 or 5 others besides me. And the game started, and I began to ring my bell. And the athletic director of Northern Colorado was on the opposite side of the stadium. He came across and he says, "You can't do that here. You can't ring your bell." I thought that was really a cheap shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you couldn't hear it that far anyway, But
No doubt. Taking it away from you.
yeah. And then once in a while at a playoff game, the officials will come over and say, "That's against the rules. You can't use that." And that happens, once in a while.
Yeah.
But I can always ring it at Allee.
There you go.
You've seen the move from the North Central Conference to the GPAC and NEIA. What have you seen? What have you thought about that? It's been a great success for us, obviously, but just from a fan standpoint.
That's the greatest move we ever made, because, the all sports trophy they have in NEIA and GPAC. And when Morningside in the old days of North Central, we were at the bottom of the list always. We just couldn't compete. We didn't have the money, didn't have enough students. And now with NEIA here, we've won that about 7 times in a row, that all sports trophy, giving up points for each sport. And that's been a wonderful, wonderful development. And of course, I think that college would have died if we hadn't changed.
Yeah.
It improved our enrollment big time.
Yeah.
And made it so we could afford it. And it's just been a wonderful move. And of course, John Reinders took a lot of heat when that happened. A lot of people were very upset leaving North Central. But we were over our head. We'd have a good football team once in a while. Basketball was pretty competitive. And baseball was okay. But we just couldn't compete at all levels. Just didn't have the money to do it. And the money was killing us. You had to give scholarships, and we didn't have the money to give scholarships back then. Now the scholarships are minimal, and just works out much, much better.
Yeah. Well, and it just turned Morningside into a household name.
Yeah.
I think that there's just prestige that comes with an organization that's able to, do what we've been able to do, whether it's on the field or the court. I think it's pretty special. And President Reinders has talked about, he goes to these national conferences with various presidents all over the country. And it used to be a who is Morningside, and now they all know him. Now they all know that name. So it was quite the transition, quite the change indeed, and really turning the ship around in our athletics.
Can you believe 4 national championships for the women in basketball and 3 in football? It's incredible, winning national championships.
Yeah.
And that's, like you say, that gets on the news and people hear about Morningside, and it's helped enrollment and everything else.
Yeah.
It really has.
I'm guessing that you've got a really special relationship with President Reinders, having worked here so long and just become friends with him at various things. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay. Yeah, he's done a great job here. I remember the night I met him, he was at a basketball game at Allee, and he came over and sat next to me. And the women were pretty bad at that time. And he looked at me and he said, "Sharon, do you know, it's hard to believe there's 10 full-ride scholarships out there." We had 10 full rides for men and women both at that time. And we had a very bad team. The men were good, but the women weren't. Huh. That was my first association with him. But he's been a real treasure. And North Central, of course, was a great conference. I loved being in there and being an athletic representative for the president. And great associations with those people. And they appreciated Morningside, mostly because they could always beat us.
Yeah, exactly.
But they were good friends, and it was fun to go to those meetings and be involved that way.
Yeah. Sharon, I want to bring you back to the classroom just a little bit. I know you were a professor for many years, but then you also took on some leadership roles. Becoming the chair of the department, right? Eventually, talk to me about that decision. You're in the classroom, you're impacting lives. You said it, over 5,000 students under your watch. Talk to me about the decision then to take on a leadership role.
Well, when Dr. Eismo retired, Bill Topp became the chair. And in the first year or so, he got a bid to be a dean down south, Huntington College. And so he was gone. Well, I left only about 3 or 4 people in our department. And so when I was asked to do that, I thought, well, it's a good thing to do. And I'd been a superintendent, so I knew something about administration.
Yeah. So
I thought I would do that. I want to tell you a funny story about that, though. The budget for education never changed in all the years I was there. Every year, everything went up for cost. We got the same amount of money.
And you made do.
And I talked to Elwood Olson about that, and he just smiled and gave me the same amount of money.
That's too funny.
But it was fun being a chair. And I got no salary for being chair back then. No salary. All you got was the headaches and the other things that came with
it. The responsibility. Yeah. But I'm sure you were able to really develop those professors around you as well, and inspire them and think about the curriculum and everything that you were putting out there, right?
And some great people. Richard Owens, Dick Owens, wonderful colleague and teacher. Carolyn Rance was in there. There's a lot of good people. So, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. A number of years in there, both with educators and with students. You know what I mean? That made a difference. And you had to think about the legacy that you were leaving on, you know, of seeing those students go on to get their student teaching and then eventually their first job. And did you have a lot of students? Do you have some come up to you and talk to you about their experience or having you in the classroom?
Oh, yeah. Every so often that happens.
Yeah.
And that's been special. Yeah. Some of those old grads are good friends.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure looked up to you and were impacted by what you were able to do here on campus. That's for sure.
Sharon, can you talk a little bit about some of the things you did outside of Morningside in the community? Anything you were involved with?
Well, I was a member at Morningside Kiwanis for many, many years. Sadly, that club died last October. We're down to about 4 members and just couldn't make it work anymore. And I've been a barbershopper, singing barbershop music for all those years. And that's been a great thing. I'm still doing that. And I was a Sunday school teacher for many, many years and loved that. Been a good experience.
Yeah.
The story just keeps getting better and better as you tell it. It does. The singing thing, where'd that background come from? Mom or dad, or just something you kind of developed along the way?
My dad is a musician. He played the fiddle and the piano, all just on his own. He didn't take any training at all. But I started singing when I was in Sunday school, Christmas programs, things like that. Always loved singing, and music has been a big, big part of my life.
Yeah.
Sang a lot of solos, and went to contests. I remember one year when I got up to go to contests in Mudecas, called the Mudecas group, and I could not make a sound, almost like this today. Just completely, I had a bad cold, you know, and couldn't make any noise. And Mom gave me a lemon, and I sucked on the lemon all the way over to the site. And by the time it came from my solo, it cleared up and I could sing, and I got a superior. So
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
that was good.
See, Mama knows best.
Yes, she does, yeah.
Well, and gosh, thinking of singing, I mean, there are a ton of traditions here at Morningside. I mean, one of which, thinking of singing, you'd be remiss without mentioning Christmas at Morningside. I got to imagine that's something that you've enjoyed over the years.
That is very, very special. Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
The choirs are so good. All the music is so good. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else? I mean, Christmas at Morningside, like I said, it's a staple, something that people mark on their calendars months in advance to make sure that they attend. Over the years, I mean, we've talked with some of our guests about bean showers and everything else that happens on campus. Talk to me about some of those traditions. Anything that stands out to you that makes Morningside special, some of those traditions or stories, things that have happened?
I did have a little association with the music department, and that was a lot of fun. I went to a lot of their concerts, went to a lot of their recitals, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I just loved the music all the way through. That was special. I sang at homecoming several times.
Did ya?
And of course, I have a ukulele, and every class I ever taught, I would sing a couple times during the year. At Christmas time, I would come in and sing some Christmas carols with the uke, and some funny songs that went along with that. And now I think, looking back, there are some people, all they remember about coming to my classes is playing the uke. They learn anything else or not, I don't know.
That was the impact. That was the lasting
They always
impression,
brought it
Sharon.
up.
That's funny. I bet you had some good memories at homecoming and watched that change over the years. I mean, now to having Taste of Morningside and all those other things.
the thing I enjoyed the most, this is kind of silly, is that that eating deal they had over there. What do they call that?
The what?
Where they have all the different firms.
Taste of Morningside.
Taste of Morningside.
Yep.
Every year I would get 3 or 4 dilly bars because they were cheap, and I love dilly bars.
Yeah.
And I'd get a couple of Charlie's.
Yep, Charlie boys.
Charlie boys.
Those staples.
Yeah, yeah. And
Taste of Morningside.
They had tickets, and I would get 10 tickets and go out and buy those things.
Yeah.
I would look forward to that every year.
Yeah.
And we haven't had that for a while, and I kind of missed that. I hope it'll come back after COVID.
Yep. Yeah, those are some of the traditions that I think generations look forward to, of being able to come back and have those staples. I mean, whether it's you meet down at Miles Inn for a Charlie Boy or you have one at homecoming, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Being able to do some of that. Well, Sharon, one of the questions that I often think about is you hear about the culture at Morningside, and just the people and the culture overall. When you think about your time here at Morningside, I mean, like Mark said, almost 3 decades. What makes Morningside special in your eyes?
Well, we've got great students, great folks there, and the faculty's always been very strong. I treasure my memories of all those faculty members that I knew. The faculty meetings, of course, were once a month. Weren't always great.
Right, undoubtedly.
But there were some great discussions back and forth from people in the faculty.
What was controversial back in those days, or what would people get heated about?
That's a good question. One thing I remember was in education, the state required that we have a human relations course.
Okay.
And it was something we just had to do, a 3-hour course talking about human relations. And of course, we had to approve that course by the faculty in order to have it. And so we had a big discussion about that. And the faculty didn't want to have anybody telling us what to teach. So it came down to a vote as to whether you'd approve that course or not. And it was a tie between the faculty members. And Frank Terry was the dean. He cast the extra vote to approve it. We had to do it, but the faculty was dragging his feet on that. It's been a good course. Learn all about different ethnic groups and so forth, and how we have to appreciate everybody. But by one vote, that passed the faculty.
Wow. Almost in defiance of the state, right?
There you go.
Wow. Yeah. That had to have been a ride, you know what I mean? To be chair of the department and going through some of those meetings. But you're right. It's the people that you met. It's the people that you mentored, the students that you met and watched grow and evolve in their careers. That's truly some of the stuff that makes Morningside special.
Yeah.
Well, anything else on your mind, Sharon, you wanted to share? We really appreciate, especially being a part of this collaboration between Down the Mside line and Inside Mside. We're excited to have you on the podcast. It's been great just learning a little bit about your career, your time here at Morningside, and the legacy that you've left. Any other stories or anything that you want to share that you've been thinking about? Anything from whether it's the basketball court and your time as a scorekeeper to in the classroom to leading the faculty? Anything you think is funny or worth sharing?
Well, I remember one story. One of my passions was that when a basketball player came over to report to go in, according to the rule book, you're supposed to give number for number, 25 for 11, you know. And that was not happening anywhere. but I thought it's going to happen here. So I'd always ask them, who are you going in for? Otherwise, they come by and slap on the table and go in just on their own. Because the other coach has a right to know what's happening with that, you know. So I made that one of my credos. You have to report. Well, and I never did have any problem with that, but one night this playing North Dakota State, and they had a player who was really good, and he came over and slapped on the desk, and I said, number for number, who are you going in for? He looked at me, just ignored me and went on in. So Dick Weichler was keeping the scoreboard, and I said, Dick, hit your horn. I'm giving him a tee. So he did, and got 2 free throws for it, technical.
Really?
Made the free throws. They won the game by 1 point. And from then on, North Central, everybody knew when they came to Allee, they had to report properly. I didn't have any problem with that after that.
Yeah.
The word got around.
I bet. You left your mark in the classroom and on the sidelines.
That's right.
You let people know not to step out of line. That's impressive, Sharon. That's a great story. Well, hey, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's meant a lot to me as an alum of this campus and just really getting to know your story. I mean, the impact that you've made, those future generations of all those educators all across the country and the globe. You truly are a special person here on campus, and we're so thankful. I know I can speak for Mark too. It's been great hearing some of these stories, don't you think, Mark?
Oh yeah, you're a tremendous person, Sharon, and I always have a lot of comfort knowing that I got a guy 2 rows behind the scoreboard table to keep us in line, so we don't do anything wrong during those games. So, and I always know when the officiating is kind of questionable, but it always is so nice to have you there because you just get used to having good people around you, and you're one of those good people, and I really appreciate everything you do, and I really thank you for being here very much.
Thank you very much.
And Sharon, I'm telling you, if you ever think he does forget, you just give a little jingle of that cowbell, all right?